Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Digitize SAP Financial Period Close with Journal Entry Management, Automation, and Compliance, hosted by SAP Insider and presented by Promenta. My name is Ogo Wanyuwu, Research Director for SAP Insider, covering the financial management area for our company, and I will be your moderator for today. Just before we start, we have a few announcements to let you guys know about before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. After the presentation, we will host a Q&A session. We invite you to submit your questions using the Q&A text box within the console. We will answer as many questions as time permits and look forward to the discussion. A copy of today's presentation will be emailed over to you following the presentation. Now, on to the discussion. Leading today's topic will be Paul Freeman, Director of Products at Promenta. Now, Paul, over to you. And for the purposes of this webinar, we will remain off camera just to provide the best streaming experience for this session. Paul, I believe you're on mute.
Thank you, Ogo. Thanks for that introduction there. And apologies everyone for being on mute for a couple of minutes there. So very warm welcome everybody to our webinar today, where we'll be discussing the challenges and the opportunities around journal entry management and how we can bring greater automation and compliance to the financial period close. Brief introductions on who's on the call today. We've got myself, Paul Freeman, Director of Products here at Promenta. We've got David Coleman, who's our Director of Projects and Technology. And we're very happy to welcome Janelle Reisenen, Global Internal Control Manager from the Kellogg company, to give some insights on their journey around automation and compliance and using Promenta to support that as well. So the objectives of the session today are to look at, like I've said, the challenges and the opportunities for journal entry management at financial close. A great way to start looking at that is to maybe review some interesting, important, and compelling research insights from the SAP Insider community. So we'll start off by having a broad picture from that perspective. What we'll then do is get into some more specific real-world examples, as I say, from the Kellogg company, and Janelle will talk us through a couple of slides to guide us through that. And then after that, we'll use the remainder of this session to really focus our attention around Journal Webflow, which is a solution from Promenta, which enables automation and compliance in this area. We'll do that by looking at some product key features in the slides. We'll have a very quick and light demo just to give everyone a feel for the opportunity that you have with the product. And then, like Ogo said, we want to try and keep this as interactive as possible. So we'll get onto a Q&A session at the end where we can answer some of your questions and share some experiences from our industry exposure so far with the tool, and take those as they come in. Okay, so first of all, to the research. So over the last 9 months of finance management research, journal entry management has come out as the top financial close process that organizations are evaluating for automation within the next 6 to 12 months. Average days to complete the monthly financial close cycle are actually increasing from 7.5 days in 2020 to 10.2 days in 2021. So this is really bringing to the fore the need for automation. It's becoming more and more compelling. And journal entry management is a central part of that at period close. Despite all that, only 23% of organizations have actually implemented or are currently using automation for journal entry management. To me, this is a very compelling statistic, and I guess it's why a lot of you have joined the session today to learn the opportunities around journal entry management, bringing automation and compliance to this really important process at period close. Building end-to-end visibility across finance function workflows is also processes like journal entry management was the #1 strategy for SAP Insider organizations. So this introductory slide on the research perspective really gets us going on this webinar today. And gives us a compelling reason to explore this some more. What I'd like to do now is try and jump into a more focused kind of perspective on this by looking at some of the opportunities that Kellogg discovered in the area of journal entry management and how they realized those opportunities using Promenta. So what I'll do, Janelle, here is I'll just roll on this slide, and perhaps you can give some insight as to your experiences, as I say, the opportunities that Kellogg discovered and how you realized some of those by using Promenta.
Sounds good. Thank you, Paul. So yes, we did identify that we had opportunities related to our manual journal entry process. Really, the key areas that we wanted to improve and focus on were, like you said, process automation and compliance. So we had a very decentralized review and approval procedures and processes across the organization. We had a lack of standardization with our approval process that really varied by the teams. So some teams would prefer to approve a journal entry via email, and other teams would actually prefer to print and manually sign the journal entry. And we also didn't have a good way to run a report to show us that real-time view of where are all of our journal entries, what status are they in, for them that way we could follow up and capture that approval. These opportunities led to an audit impact with our SOX 404 testing, and it was really centered around design opportunities. So that inconsistent approval process, locating missing documentation around approvals. So did I sign that manual journal entry on paper and it's in my drawer at my desk, or is it saved on my desktop somewhere? And we also had the decentralized supporting documentation that was also impacted. So then if we move to the next slide here, what are we going to do about that? Well, we implemented Promenta as our automated solution. So really, Promenta was able to help us address our design opportunities, and we were able to experience a lot of key benefits here. So with Promenta, it's fully embedded within SAP. All of our approval complexity was covered. So what does that mean? We were able to actually configure Promenta to determine what entries required approval and what entries would just be auto-approved through Promenta. We were also able to configure teams, so then that way if the journal entry required approval, it would be sent on to a team in order to obtain that approval. All this was done within SAP, so we still had the full SAP validation and the automated posting. Another key benefit was the Excel integration for our posters. So Promenta is an Excel add-in, so we were able to still use Excel, and we also leveraged GLSU. So together, those two systems were able to interact. Another key benefit we had was the web-based approvals. So approvers were notified via email when they had an entry in their queues to approve. And then also our posters received an email letting them know the update on status. And one of the really, coming from compliance myself here, one of the key areas that I really like to talk about is this process and compliance reporting. So we are able to run a report within Promenta and see in real time what our journal activity looks like. So what entries have all been submitted into the system, what entries have been auto-approved, what entries have been approved by the approver teams, and then what entries are still waiting for that approval. So we were able to use this report and then follow up to capture the approval for those entries. So with this Promenta, we were able to resolve all of our SOX 404 design opportunities. We now have a consistent and standardized journal entry process by having all of our journal entries flow through Promenta. And we're also able to have all of our approvals in Promenta and saved in SAP. So it's all in one location. And this also saves our supporting documentation along with the journals, all within Promenta and in SAP. So with that, I'll hand it back to Paul then.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Janelle. It's always great to get real world insights, especially with an organization the size of Kellogg, large, complex, global in reach, and how you're managing journals and achieving those automation and compliance opportunities and goals there, which is fantastic. So thank you very much for sharing that experience with us all. So what I'll now do is come back to more of a structured kind of information kind of delivery approach to give you more insight into Journal Webflow, which is the tool that Janelle was referring to there that they've implemented at Kellogg, and many of other customers have done the same. So what we'll do here is look at some key features through the slides just to set the scene, and then we'll get in and look at a live demo, just a quick single approval of a journal request, and then a single approver, give you a feel for how that looks. And then we'll get on and do that Q&A session at the end and hear some of your comments and questions there. So Journal Webflow, it's a workflow automation, compliance and reporting solution for SAP journal entry. It's an SAP certified solution. It's running inside S/4HANA or ECC. It's certified in both. And as Janelle mentioned, we're running inside SAP. So just to distinguish ourselves, this is not a cloud-based solution. Many of our customers do run cloud-based solutions, maybe Cooper or Blackline to do their reconciliation kind of work. But when it comes to journals, it's the level of integration that we offer that gives us the kind of point of difference. And we'll get on to more of those messages as we go through these slides and through the demo itself. To look at some of those key features, then let's not hide anything away. Let's jump down a level and just have a look at how this looks from a user perspective. So when I say user, I'm talking about requesters and I'm talking about approvers. Let's focus on requesters first. So as Janelle alluded to, requesters are working directly inside Excel itself. So we have an Excel add-in, the Promenta Excel add-in. That allows me to right-click on fields and dynamically pull pick lists from SAP. We don't have to store those in the Excel, that's all dynamic. It allows me to validate my sheet when I've built my journal, and it will give me a list of all my errors. It will even point out the row that those errors are on, and it will give me a send to workflow option so I can connect directly to the web-based workflow and trigger that workflow automatically. So from a requester point of view, there's lots of automation here, lots of integration with SAP, and the integrity of their journal is really high from the outset. Also, as Janelle alluded to, we integrate with GLSU. In fact, that's how Kellogg are using this. So we have a technical integration with GLSU. So if you're using that upload tool, you can extend that to workflow. So once again, you can validate, you can prepare and validate, and you can send to workflow directly from Excel. This time you would have the GLSU add-in there. We also support other formats, a Windshuttle format, Innoera, in-house Excel templates that you might be uploading today. We can make those integrate into our workflow process. So when the user clicks on that send to workflow, what we then do is we start a web-based workflow process. That Excel sheet is dynamically embedded within that web-based process. And what we have is what we call a Promenta virtual finance document. So we're not parking any documents in SAP. We're not stealing numbers from that number range, which sometimes makes it difficult for auditors to, they have to go and reconcile what are these gaps in the number ranges, all that kind of thing. That noise goes out the way. We have a clean virtual Promenta finance document, which will serve the approval process. It might get rejected, in which case we don't touch SAP. But if it gets approved, we will then post that virtual finance document when all the approvals are in place. So that's how that's working. What we can also do is support documentation evidence, which is often needed within these journal processes. So you would upload your document to the request. You can have multiple attachments. They can be mandatory, whereby the requester can't even submit their request unless they're in place. And at the very end of this process, we store this documentation centrally against the posted finance document in SAP. So that's what Janelle was referring to. One of their SOX challenges, opportunities, was to try and get that centralized a bit more. That's what the product is achieving. These document supports they're attached to that finance document. Again, we'll see that a bit later on. One of the big things, just to highlight again, is our integration with SAP. So because we're running inside SAP, at the point of request, we can demand that the requester runs a full simulation of the proposed journal posting. What this means is that any granular errors that might pop up at final approval happen now. So it means your senior finance stakeholders don't see any horrible data errors in front of them when they just want to get go about their business, approve this from a business point of view, and carry on. So we deal with all of those errors right at the beginning. We force that simulation. It runs a transaction level simulation against FBO1 or FBD1, whatever that transaction might be. And we deal with those errors right now, and we get the data integrity right to a very high level from the get-go, and then the process will flow smoothly. When we're ready to submit, that's when we jump into the workflow piece of our product. So, this is always different from company to company. Kellogg will have their way of doing it, and other companies will have their way of doing it as well. The flexibility comes with the architecture of our tool. So you can say to us, look, we need to route by company code and value, or it might be ranges of GL accounts or the document type. We've got the flexibility to configure it for your own needs and make sure that the routing flows to serve like the demands of your organization from an approval perspective. So lots of flexibility there. And we can talk about that more with you based on your needs if there's an interest after the webinar today. The other kinds of things that you'd really expect from a workflow-based tool like this are the ability to substitute in approvers, forward requests that might get stuck, send notifications and reminders to approvers to actually engage with the process, get the job done so we can close the books, close the period. So the workflow piece is very configurable, and it has all of the tools and the bells and the whistles that you need to make sure that it is genuinely automation that we've got here and not things getting stuck in the wrong places and people are reminded at the right times to get the job done. So once that workflow process flows, then your approvers become engaged in this process. So what you then have is two different ways of sending that notification out. The first way is through an email notification. So it will look a bit like this. You'd open up that email from your inbox, you'd get some summary information, comments from colleagues about the urgency or anything you need to know about this posting. And then there's a link inside that email which you would click to take you into the actual web-based workflow itself. You can open up all the attachments, you can review the Excel file, you can review the support documentation, obviously look at the summary statistics here, and then you can give your audited approval as part of that, which is then stored within Promenta, which really helps at audit time. And you can see exactly who's requesting that, who approved and at which point to make sure that you're compliant and you're delivering your planned process in practice. The other way into this from an approver is through the Promenta Webflow inbox. This is great for teams. So if you've got a back office team where they're sharing the work, all of the team will see the requests come in. But as soon as one user within that team takes control of a request, it will automatically disappear from the inbox of their colleagues within the team. Once you get through that piece, you're then into opening up the request and then approving in an audited way, same messaging as the previous slide really there, to get that audited approval into SAP. On final approval, that's when we take that virtual finance document and we post it dynamically within SAP. So that all happens automatically. If we reject, of course, we haven't taken a document number out the number range and it just gets cancelled. That's the end of that process. But when we fully approve this across all the different stakeholders, we get that final posting at the end with all of the attachments attached to the finance document at this point. So this is what I was referring about earlier, and this is how it manifests within SAP. I've got a posted finance document, I've got my Excel file, I've got my Webflow kind of ID with a small file there showing the audit trail right in place there against the finance document as well for quick reference, but also the support documentation is all in here as well. Of course, there is comprehensive reporting around this as well. So if you look at this number 35197, we can drill into some of our reporting and show how if you drill into the history, you're going to be able to see the audit trail. Now, this is just one glimpse of what we can do in the reporting, a very important one at that, because it's often the area that auditors drill into to make sure that the right level of seniority has approved very high level journals against your plan. So this is what this is about for SOX 404. Plan a process, implement a process, report on that process so that everything lines up coherently. That's what the auditors want to see. And that is what our reporting is delivering for you as well. But it's not just about audit, it's about process as well. So how long is it taking us to request and post journals? A lot of the time, companies just don't have the visibility of this very important information. So that's what we're trying to do with some of our process reporting, is say, look, 35197, that took 4 minutes and 50 seconds, total aging of that request. We also break that down by team. So approver 1 had it for 2 minutes and 48. That approver 2 had it for another time frame. So you get the idea. You can see where the bottlenecks are, and it's about not only achieving audit and control, but it's about achieving efficiency, spotting the bottlenecks, and training teams, empowering teams, and educating teams the way you need to get them to engage in the period close in a more efficient and automated way. And Promenta is the tool that's wrapping around the journal management process to give you this end-to-end capability. So that's all I wanted to say in the slides, just to set the scene before the demo. What we'll do now is jump into a live demo and just have a quick look at a single approval request so you can get a feel for the real thing. What I'm going to do here, first of all, here's a very simple journal. I've got some header information. I've got 2 line items. Of course, you can have thousands of line items. We'll split the record for you. You can have intercompany. You can have all sorts of different kinds of journals. And we support different templates with different fields in that template. But if I just click on validate here, I just need to pick a system. So I haven't logged on yet, so just bear with me. So normally you'll log on once and you're in there, for your session, so to speak. But let me just, typo there, but I'll come back and correct that. Okay. So what I want to do first of all is just validate this sheet. And it's going to look at every single row on the Excel sheet, every line item, and it's going to tell me if I've got any errors. If I did have errors, it would point out the specific row that the error was on to really fast track my error diagnostics and my resolution of those errors. So that's looking good. What I'll not do now is send this to workflow. So if I click send to workflow from my Excel sheet, that will dynamically open up my browser and it will embed my Excel sheet neatly into the screen there. I can put on some support documentation. So let me just go and grab a file. And I can simply go to summary. So at the moment, what we've done is we've dynamically opened up that sheet. We've analyzed it. We've calculated an approval amount. We've got the company code. We know how we're going to route this. It's going to go to a single approver. You can review all that information. We don't have any SAP finance documents. They're all pending because we've just got a virtual Promenta finance document at the moment. All of this is embedded and running inside SAP, just as a reminder. I can't submit this yet because I'm forced to do a simulation. So if I do a simulation, that will now do a full simulated posting in FBO1 of this journal. So I know now if I submit this, none of the senior managers, if this was a 5 million journal and it was going to the CFO or VP, they're not going to get bothered by any data errors. And that gives me a lot more comfort knowing that. So let me go ahead and submit this now. So my virtual finance document goes off. I've got a request ID here, which I'm just going to copy. And that now goes into the approval process. So what I'm going to do here, let me also, that ID is also embedded in this Excel file, so you don't accidentally submit the same thing again. Of course, you can resubmit if it's been rejected and you've had to correct. So there is functionality to support that as well. But let me just close that down. While that's routing out to my email, let me just quickly come across here to one of our reports so we can drill into that request. So, of course, I could leave this report open and run it for everything over the last 30 days. So I'm going to see everything, all the activity that's out there at the moment. You know what it's like at period close. Lots of requests flying around all over the place. This is our center of gravity. This is where we can say, right, what's out there right now? Give me the full picture, what's pending, what's rejected, what's completed. So you can get a feel for how that period is closing from a journal entry management perspective. What I'm going to do in the demo, though, is just drill into this specific record. When I drill into this, it gives me some key information. This is a submitted request. So if I was running a broader report, it would be dropped into that bucket for now. But I can, as an administrator, come in here and say, right, who's this with right now? So if I double click on here, we can see it's with this person called the approver in our demo example. It might be with several people here who have the authority to take action. Because this is an administrative function, I can also forward this if I want to, or adopt it myself if it's in a bottleneck and I need to get that moving. What I can also do is look at the history. So we looked at this in the slides. This is the audit history. So this is showing me what's happened so far. And at the very end, when it's posted, an auditor can come back in here and say, right, let's have a look at this journal, random example, who's involved, who requested, who approved, how does that audit trail look? So everything is coherently stored here from an audit perspective. So I just wanted to jump away from the front end, just to show you that when you submit a request, like I just did, it's not gone into a black box and nobody can see it. You know, we've got that visibility, the transparency is there. That's there within SAP in our reporting using the Promenta tool. And it's just really good to get that bit of insight there. Okay, so while I was talking there, what we should have in here, if I just refresh my inbox, is an email. So this email has come in and I can go ahead and approve this request from this email. We can see that I didn't have any comments in particular, the company code it's for, we can see the amount that it's for, and so on. Just before I go and approve that, let me show you one other angle on this. Let me just log on as the approver to our Promenta portal, which gives you a really good kind of overview of kind of all of the requests that you have. And you can, this is the way in to look at the inbox as well. So you get a bit of a dashboard like this, kind of my 5 most recent notifications that have come in. This is the one from the demo today. I can go and look at my inbox and I can see that same request in there. I could open it and process it from there. So it's just to give you a feel for the different angles on how you can access a request. So that's fine for now. Let me jump back to the email and let's do it from the email. So if I click on the link in the email, that's going to open up that request that we just submitted. In display only format, I can have a look at the Excel file and I can look at the support attachments. I can jump to the summary screen and notice how I now have the opportunity to approve or reject. If I reject, I have to put a rejection reason that will route back to the requester. They can then resubmit that from the same Excel file if they want to, because it will have this, they can correct the same Excel file and resubmit directly from there because it has that request ID and we can integrate with that same process and keep the audit trail together. But if I'm going to approve, this is the point where we take the virtual finance document. And in here, in a minute, you're going to see, or in a couple of seconds, you're going to see a proper SAP finance document. When I click approve, my fully approved process will now post the virtual Promenta finance document as an actual SAP document against that company code. So if I jump across to SAP now and look at that document, this should be a bit more familiar for a lot of people on the call. There's my posted document. Inside the attachment list, I have all of my key attachments. I've got my original Excel data source where we prepared that journal. I have my support attachments in here as well. And I have this webflow index file with my unique reference ID, which governed that posting process and involved multiple stakeholders across my organization. If I double click on that, it actually is a small text file and I can see the audit trail right here in situ so that I don't have to go and run a report. I can just say, oh, who was involved in this one? All right, it was Promenta to this guy and that guy. Good. But of course, our reporting is more comprehensive. You've just been looking at that a moment ago. If I go back to that report now and just refresh it, you can see it's completed. And inside the history, we're going to have a full audit trail there, requester and approver. So that gives you an idea of, you know, how we can take an Excel file in a familiar interface that finance people are used to using, give them that familiar interface, enhance that interface with an add-in which gives you pick lists, it gives you validation, and it gives you the ability to just click a button and get your workflow going for approval and then get on with other things. And then it shows you how different stakeholders around the organization can dynamically, in an automated way, become engaged in requests that are relevant to them. They give their approval. It's quick and easy for those guys. And we've got a center of gravity of transparency on the whole thing and an audit trail to boot at the end of that. What I can also show you very quickly is our aging report. If I just put in here the request that we were just looking at there, this is that same request, slightly different information here. We'll have, if I just go to the right, total aging, there it is, 4 minutes and 16 was the total length of time it took us to run that demo. And there is only one approver today, so you're going to see the same value there. But of course, all the approvers will be on here. And if you've got bottlenecks and things are in the red, this report will make them visible. So it might just be one area, one company code, and they may need additional resourcing support. They might need it on a mobile device. We integrate with SAP Fiori inbox as well. So, just to highlight that as well, a lot of companies are using the Fiori inbox now, but you don't have to. So, it may be that you need to leverage those kinds of tools to get the efficiency at period close that you need for your organization. So it's quite a small demo, but it's nice to start with the research insight. It's nice to hear from Kellogg, who've actually implemented this to take advantage of the opportunities that they saw in front of them. And then it's good to show something a bit more low level and tangible so that you can learn about the opportunities that are out there for you too, to implement a similar kind of tool to achieve the similar make the most of the same opportunities and get the same advantages at audit time, and as you're closing every single period, to get the efficiencies and the compliance in place that this process demands, and the finance space there. So that's the end of the live demo, so to speak. What we'll do now is jump across to a Q&A. We've got lots of time for that. Maybe what I'll do here then is I'll keep sharing my screen, but Ogo, do you want to ask any questions that might have come in across the across the chat while we've been talking?
Yeah, Paul, thank you for that presentation. And as a reminder, everyone in attendance, you can submit your question in the Q&A by typing your question into the Q&A text box and clicking submit. What I'll do is I will start with some questions that were submitted prior to the live presentation by some registrants who couldn't attend. And the first question that comes in is, can we have multiple and different Excel templates to prepare journals?
Yes, you can. Yeah, so if you think about it, you can have very simple journals. You could have a foreign currency posting, accruals, recurring, reversals. COPA fields can come into play. So what our customers tend to do is structure things and not have too many templates, but maybe have 2 or 3 which are covering off all of those different areas. And we've got a template manager so that you can manage that kind of thing as well. And as already mentioned, you can have different formats. So you could have a GLSU format, you could have a Promenta format, your own custom format. So there's a lot of flexibility there on how that can work.
Okay, and then I would say second follow-up question would be, can the user make it mandatory to attach supporting documentation?
Yes, that is possible. So I touched on that in the demo itself. You can, sometimes it's mandatory before you can even submit your journal to have that support documentation in place. So the other thing to highlight is that sensitive documentation can even be hidden from unauthorized users. So there's a lot of flexibility on making things mandatory, as well as making sure that if there's anything sensitive there, we control who's got eyes on that as well.
Got it. And one thing to think about too is the impact this will have on Sarbanes-Oxley compliance for our community. That was an area of focus within our research this year, especially with regard to the financial close.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a great point. And Janelle touched on that and I touched on it as well. So, we've covered that in the session, but yeah, for sure. I mean, SOX 404 in particular is one where, you have to plan your process, you have to document it, show that you're in control of your process, and then actually implement it, and then prove prove that you're following your implemented and planned process. And really, I hope that the demo today has shown that the functional positioning of this product is to achieve exactly that. On top of that, actually, we some of our customers even use our product as an opportunity to remove powerful financial transaction codes from users as well, because the final posting at the end can be handled with a service user. We can do that because we've got the audit trail of the real world people who've been involved. So, and auditors love that part of it as well, because you're rationalizing down who has access to very powerful transaction codes in SAP. So it helps with Sarbanes-Oxley on at a number of different levels.
And how does that translate in terms of the ability to manage large journals? And when you answer that question, I'll circle back as to why that's an important consideration for our community.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, there are large journals out there. I mean, 20,000 line items, 30,000, you get them. And, the SAP has I'm sure everybody in the call knows there's a limit of 999 line items within SAP. So then we automatically split those against like a balancing account for you. Obviously, you tell us what that account is, and we can handle that for you as well. And so there's no restriction there. Sometimes larger journals take a bit of extra time to run in, but that's just volume. But we certainly do support them. So yeah, that's not a restriction at all within the product.
And the reason why some of these questions I think are coming up in our recent research, we yesterday published the Financial Close Transformation Report, and what we saw was that the need to eliminate extensive manual intervention it was a top objective within our community. So it's good to kind of flesh out some of these use cases that can address that challenge that our audience and that goal that our audience has highlighted.
Absolutely.
In terms of any other questions, let me review the Q&A and see if there are any questions. Okay, so in terms of what is the key difference between Promenta Journal Webflow and other market options?
Okay, so I think we touched on it at the very start. So the key thing about the Promenta Journal Webflow is that it's running inside SAP itself. So it's fully SAP centric. Of course, we have the Excel add-in, which is arguably an Excel add-in, but that itself doesn't have any functionality within it other than to connect with SAP, pull data and do all those kinds of things. So we're very much an SAP centric solution. And that is, of course, very different to cloud-based solutions which handle journal workflow. One of the challenges there is that if you do that from the cloud, you're getting those validation errors often at the very end of the process and often with a senior stakeholder. So, there are great tools out there for reconciliation in the cloud. Obviously, our positioning is to complement those tools, blend with them, and use the right tools in the right environments for the right process. So that is how I would distinguish us really. It's that integration benefit, the validation, the workflow within SAP with your existing SAP users. Often organizations are managed, are structured based on the roles that different users within the organization have as well. So, being inside SAP can leverage all of that for us. And certainly if sensitive data is involved in these kinds of processes, again, you want that to be handled mainly inside SAP. And that's, we wrap around all of that inside SAP rather than needing to pull this kind of data out into the cloud environment. So that's how I would distinguish us really there amongst other options that are out there at the moment.
And does that support organizations that want to streamline locally before reporting up to the group?
Absolutely, yes. So I mean, the reporting element is separate. Obviously, as the period is closing, the reporting is changing. So we support we support the process as it flows really, and that is really governed by the business on how they would kind of report and at which points in the period close.
Okay, and then how much? What is the cost investment for Promenta Journal Webflow, and can you explain a little bit more about the pricing model?
Absolutely, yes. Of course, it's always a key point. Obviously, I'm not going to be starting to throw numbers around on the call, as you can well imagine, but if anybody is interested in receiving pricing, just reach out to me after the call. I think we'll be putting our contact details into the chat as well for people to take, and I'll certainly be reaching out to the attendees individually anyway. But in terms of the model, there's no upfront software fee. We've developed our model over time, and it's an annual subscription and maintenance license, basically. So it's a more accessible way of implementing the tool, and it gives you the ability to then expand it across. I mean, some of our customers have 8 SAP systems as an example, but they didn't go live on all 8 at the same time. So you can kind of, you can go out on different landscapes on a multi-year program if that suits your budgets and your project better. There are, of course, implementation services, but we handle those remotely because this is an off-the-shelf tool. You don't need a big on-site project for this. And Dave Coleman's team, who's on the call, we manage these projects remotely. Pre-COVID days, we were on site a lot doing workshops at the beginning, but even that seems to have become more remote these days. So, which gives you some insight on the fact that, it's the complexity of these projects aren't that high. It goes into the workflow routing rules, but that can all be handled remotely as well. So hopefully that gives a bit of a glimpse in the call today, but obviously more tangible information can be provided in a document to explain that a bit better, beyond this call.
That's important information for our community because, again, from our most recent research, we see that budget constraints are a barrier to organizations that want to automate and streamline their SAP financial close. So, appreciate that response. I guess the last question that I think I would want to ask, and one that would surface in terms of our community, would be the idea of timeline, right? How long does it take to implement Promenta Journal Webflow? Because what we hear is an interest in quick wins and quick time to value, and pre-configured solutions can often support that.
Absolutely. I mean, our vanilla product can be up and running in half a day. So, and that is including a workflow, which is routing by company code and value, which is a very typical kind of model. That gives us the ability to run proof of concepts for free. So you can get in touch with and say, look, I want to have a look at this in our sandbox. Can you drop it in so a few key users can have a look at this? We can definitely do that. So if that's of interest, get in touch with us. We offer our own agility on installing it. Gives us that flexibility to run that service for free. So that's half a day for the vanilla. Obviously, if you look at, I'm not going to get into details, but if you look at a big complex organization like Kellogg's, there's a lot of it's a big geographical kind of footprint. There's lots of different company codes. There's lots of rules. It's complex, as well as other customers of ours of that same size. All the work goes into designing the workflow routing for you and configuring that within the vanilla. So what we do is we often put the vanilla in, get it up and running, and then we have a period of time where we do a design phase, understand your workflow routing needs, document that in a functional spec. It's the typical project lifecycle: design, build, testing, go live. And that that is largely dictated by the customer. The piece Promenta does is normally a couple of weeks of lapse time, but a project like this can range from 6 to 12 weeks for the size of companies that often put this product in. Once you've gone through the design, the build, the UAT, the go live, the change management, in and amongst everything else that people are doing, and keeping in mind that you can't get away from periods closing every month or quarter or year as you run these kinds of projects, and the people involved in the project are often doing that day job as well. So, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a feel. It's not a massive amount of time. There's flexibility. We've done these projects in 4 weeks, but we've also done them in 6 months. So, it's governed by the customer more than anything else.
Great insight. Great insight. I believe there's one individual that wants to understand, okay, they missed the live demo and want to know if it'll be accessible. Yes, the demo will be accessible, and we will be able to present this presentation via email, and you will also be able to contact Promenta and Dave for a more extensive demo. And as he said, some of the information on pricing and what have you, definitely reach out to the Promenta team and David and Paul especially.
That's great.
We have one more question from our audience. Also, if we would like to do a proof of concept in our system, is that something we can do?
Absolutely, it is. So if you just get in touch with me after this call, Dave, maybe you can drop my information into the chat, or if the person on the chat just puts their company name that they've asking from, we can reach out to you after the call and just give you some options there and share a bit more information.
Sure. Yep. I'm not sure. I'm just pinging it now. I'm not sure if everyone can see that. If everyone can see the information there.
So in terms of what we'll do is we'll provide that information in the chat. I believe David is doing that right now, but everyone will get access to this webinar, and with that they'll have the contact information. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Again, if you did not get your question answered or you have another question, we'll be in contact, and we'll make sure that you have that information. And so what we can do again is, before we sign off, we can provide some of this information to those that attended in the chat.
That's great. So just some closing comments from me. Just a thank you to everybody who took the time to join the session today. I hope it was useful, a good investment of your time. And a big thank you once again to Janelle Reisenen for taking time out of her busy day to join us. It's been a pleasure working with Kellogg over the years, and we look forward to continuing that as well. And so a big thank you to you, Janelle, for that. Much appreciated. Also, thanks to Ogo for hosting this, and to SAP Insider. And we look forward to reaching out to the people who attended and sharing more information as needed, to take this any further that you would like to. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, and signing off.
Thank you.
Thank you.